Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Anko adopts Naruto and after she sees how villagers treat him part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. What the fuck was I thinking? She asked herself. I can barely manage to keep myself from getting killed on a regular basis, and here I go taking some kid with the same problem to raise. I'm not even old enough to have my own kid. I think you were thinking that you didn't want another person have to go through what you do, especially one so young, a man said walking into the kitchen where the woman was at. He looked at her with his one visible eye, while making a smile of sorts. He put a small orange book away and turned to face the woman. Besides, I think that this will be good for the both of you, Anko. I know, it's just raising a kid is a lot of work that I'm not sure I'm ready for just yet. I mean, I just now turned 16. This is a sudden change, Kakashi. Anko replied as she finished her glass of sake. You'll be fine, if you still have doubts though, I will be glad to take him off your hands for you. Kakashi told her. Hell no, I'd rather die than to see someone as innocent as him turn into a perverted, tardy bastard like yourself. Anko shouted. See, you're on the right track already. Kakashi said. Anyways, I must be off, make sure you go report to Hokage-sama about his first night with you. With a puff of smoke, Kakashi vanished leaving Anko alone again. She let out a small sigh as she returned to the sight of the small boy. She took off her coat and hung it on the door, and then sat back down in a chair by the boy's bed. He was drenched with sweat, as he began to kick in fear, as if he was having a nightmare. Anko slowly rubbed the side of cheek. His kicking slowed and then stopped, as if it had been enough to calm him down. Those damn bastards, she said in a low voice. She closed her eyes for a moment and began to play that night back in her head. Anko was walking home from a small shop in the west side of town which sold some of the best dango in town. She had just finished putting down her third plate, and was walking out of the restaurant with a rather happy smile on face. Despite what people saw though, this was not a face of joy. It was merely a mask. She walked down the road, looking at people out of the corner of her eye. They'd mutter things like traitor, monster, and whore. If not for the sheer amount of restraint she had forced herself to hold onto, she would leap out and kill every one of those bastards. Instead, she shrugged it off, like she always did, and continued to make her way home, to the lone tower which rested in the forest of death. As she was turning the corner of the street which led to the fence that she leapt over to get to the forest, she came to what was an odd sight. A group of villagers were encircled around something. From this angle, she could not quite make out what it was they were shouting at, however she had heard the terms they were using. Monster, demon, brat, some of the things she was often called. With a sigh, Anko threw caution into the wind, and leapt onto the nearest building. She quickly sprinted across the rooftops, making her way towards the crowd. The yelling became more violent and loud as she came closer. She nearly fell at the sight she saw. The anger now welling up inside of her. In the center of the crowd was a small boy. His face covered in dirt, and tears rolling down the side of his face. Terror, hate, and sadness filled his beautiful, blue eyes as well. He wore simple, ragged-like clothing. An overgrown black t-shirt, which was barely hanging on to him anymore, and a pair of dark blue shorts. Blood was running down the side of his face and his arms, as he tightly held a small teddy bear, as if he was expecting it to keep him safe from harm. With a single word, one of the villagers in the circle walked up and kicked the small boy in the stomach, causing him to fall over into the mud. Another villager took advantage of this, jamming a kunai into the small child's leg. Anko's eyes focused in on that one who stabbed the poor child. Her eyes widened with anger as she saw the chunin jacket he was wearing. That was it. Anko would not let this shit go on any longer. Leave him alone, you bastards, she shouted. Anko leapt of the rooftop and landed in the middle of the circle. The small child looked even worse up close. One of his eyes were swollen shut. Mud, dirt, and blood were covering his hair. Cuts, scrapes, scratches, and dried blood ran down his legs and arms. This only made her more angry. The small child looked up at her with his ocean blue eyes, before they closed and he passed out. "What the hell are you doing, bitch?" cried the Chunin. "Move aside so we can kill that demon bastard once and for all." "What demon? All I see is a poor child being beaten for something retarded." Anko replied. "Just goes to show you what filthy, treasonous, slut like you knows." A woman shouted at her. "This monster child is the Kyubi. Refusing to move shows that you are just as evil as the bastard is." "Evil," Anko said to herself. "You want evil. You got it." Anko quickly formed several hand signs. She shot both of her arms forwards, causing snakes to shoot out of the sleeves of her jacket, straight at the villagers surrounding her and the small boy. One of them latched onto the Chunin's face, its fangs impacting the skull of the shinobi. The townspeople quickly scattered to avoid the snakes. Anko used this opportunity to scoop the boy carefully into her arms, and run with him. Behind her she could hear the shouts of the villagers as they decided to chase after the two. Anko knew she had to think of something, anything to save herself, as well as the child from the people's wrath. Without thinking, she turned a corner, only to find herself in a dead-end alleyway. She backed up against the wall, cradling the small child as if her life depended on it. Her eyes widened with hate as she saw them approaching. "It's over, monsters," one of the chasers shouted. "You're right, it is," a voice replied. With a puff of smoke, various Junin now stood in between Anko and the child, and the townspeople. They all backed away, before one of the Junin stepped forward. His silver hair shined in the light of the moon. You couldn't see much of his face, as it was hidden behind his Hittite and a face mask. After the townspeople recognized him, they turned and fled. The man sighed and turned to face Anko and the boy. "Are you both all right?" he asked. Anko slowly nodded her head. "Good. Now then, I'm going to need you to hand over the boy," he replied. Anko hesitated. What if this was another trick, for more people to hurt him? She looked at the child in her arms. "No," she responded. She looked at him with fear of what would happen next. Her fingers rubbed the small whisker marks on his face. "Only if you let me come with him." Anko froze for a moment when she heard those words come out of her mouth. "I promise, nothing will happen," the man replied. Anko slowly handed him the boy and the two took off towards Hokage Tower. In his office, the third Hokage sat taking a break from the overflowing paperwork on his desk. He took one long puff on his pipe before trying to get back to work. He sighed. This was a lot harder now than it was a long time ago. He picked up his pen to do some signing, when he heard a knock on his door. "May I help you?" he called out. "Two visitors for you, Hokage-sama," the woman behind the door called out. "I see," the third replied. "Please send them in." The woman nodded and through the doors entered Anko, along with the man that had saved her. The man holding the child still holding his teddy bear. "Kakashi, Anko, Naruto?" the Hokage asked. "Is that the kid's name?" Anko asked. She put her hand on his head and noticed that he was running a small fever. The Sandame simply nodded, and turned to Kakashi. Said Junin stood at attention as he knew a report was expected. "What happened?" he asked. "We found him being attacked by a group of villagers again," Kakashi explained. Anko arrived to aid in his protection first, and when several other Junin, including myself, arrived, we were able to drive the rest of them off. He slowly walked over to a couch nearby and placed Naruto on it to rest. Anko looked with concern about what in the world could have driven the villagers to attack a poor child like that. Anko looked back at the Hokage and walked towards him. "Who is he?" she asked. "The name you called him, Naruto, sounds familiar." "It should," the Hokage replied. Kakashi looked at him with concern, but the old man's nod was enough to tell the Junin that it was okay to tell Anko. "His full name is Uzumaki Naruto." "Uzumaki?" Anko asked. Her eyes suddenly flashed when she remembered. "He's the kid with the fox demon sealed in him, ain't he?" "Correct," Kakashi replied. As a result, many of the people see him as the demon itself, instead of a carrier for it. They only see the demon, not the boy. Just like me, Anko said to herself. What was that, Anko? The Sandame asked. It's nothing, she replied. So what will happen now? A nurse is on the way to remove the kunai and treat some of his wounds, the old man replied. After which, he will remain here for the night and then in the morning I will place him in the orphanage again until he is about 7. Again, Anko asked. You mean this isn't the first time he's been there? I'm afraid not. The third said. He retook his seat behind the desk and took a puff of his pipe. He has been kicked out of the orphanage several times. I managed to pay a fee to get him back in, and then the cycle will repeat itself. So why do you keep sending him back even though they'll just toss him back out? Anko asked. There is nothing else that can be done. Kakashi says. We try our best to keep watch of him, but with most of the Junin running missions, and the Hokage working to restore order to the town after the demons attack and such, it is not easy to always be there for him. Anko looked at the boy with her eyes beginning to water. He was being forced to suffer because of the village's issues of not being able to look deep into who Naruto really is. It was just like her on so many levels. She returned to the Leaf Village, to redeem herself, to work to be forgiven, but even after 3 years and becoming one of the youngest Junin ever, she was still looked at as the scum of the village, much like Naruto. The nurse walked in and there was silence for the next 30 minutes. After she had done the treatment, she bowed and left the three and Naruto to themselves again. It's getting late, the Hokage said. You should both retire for the evening. Thank you for protecting Naruto for me, Anko. Wait, Anko suddenly shouted. Kakashi and the Hokage both looked at her with widened eyes. I want to watch him. I want to adopt Naruto. She was stunned. Did those words really come out of her mouth? You? Kakashi asked in surprise. Are you sure about that? I mean, it seems rather rushed that you just jumped to that conclusion. I'm sure. Anko replied. I want to do this. I want to protect Naruto from what I go through, and what path in life I took because of the pain of being alone. The Hokage scratched his beard and nodded. Take the boy home tonight. Kakashi shall escort you both there. Spend time with him tonight and tomorrow, and then be back here around 4 p.m. to make your final decision. Anko nodded and walked to Naruto. She carefully held him in her arms, and in an act that surprised them all, Anko included, kissed him on the forehead, telling him that he would not have to be alone ever again. Kakashi excused themselves, escorted the two to the place she called home. Anko's eyes snapped open as she felt a sudden jerk. She looked up and saw a groggy, tired, and confused Naruto looking around his current location. He then looked down and saw Anko. Both of their eyes truly meeting for the first time. Anko stared straight into Naruto's eyes. The small boy did the same thing. Neither of them knew what to do. Anko noticed the boy shaking some in fear. He clutched the small teddy bear by his side, pulling it into his lap. Thoughts were racing through Anko's mind. Alright, think of something, she thought to herself. Just because you have no idea how to react with a kid doesn't mean that you'll be terrible at it. Hiya, kid, Anko said with a smile. A part of her felt like kicking herself for shouting it like that. Naruto simply scooted away from her. His grip on the bear tightened. Anko was starting to wonder just how often those people had beat and cursed him. She smiled as she moved from the chair and looked at Naruto. My name is Anko. What's your name? She said. It was better than that shout she used earlier. NN Naruto, the boy replied in a low voice. Naruto, that's a nice name. Anko replied. Naruto gave a faint smile at this. His grip on the stuffed bear lightened a little, and he felt himself scoot just a very light inch closer to Anko. The girl smiled as she saw him scoot closer, but decided to give him a little space for now. So, Naruto, Anko began. Are you hungry? You look like you would be after sleeping for a long time like that. Naruto gave a slow nod. Well, let's say we head to the kitchen and get you something to eat, okay? She got of the bed and held her hand out for him to take. Reluctant at first, Naruto slowly and carefully reached out and took her hand. A large amount of fear was in his eyes, but inside, he somehow felt safe with her. Still, he kept his hopes low. Some of the people in the village were nice to him until they led him into an alley or something to that extent to beat him up or something. He climbed off the bed and slowly walked with her to the kitchen. He kept his bear close by him, still using it as a safety line should this turn ugly. Alright, Naruto-kun, Anko said with a smile as they reached the kitchen. What would you like to eat? Naruto looked down at the ground for a minute, and another small smile appeared on the child's face. Do you have any ramen? He asked. Let me see. Anko said as she opened up one of the cabinets and pulled a small cup out. Well, yes I do. Naruto's small smile grew a little wider at this. Anko chuckled to herself about the small boy's reaction. She took him to a small table and sat him down, putting his bear in the chair beside him, as if it was going to eat as well. She then prepared the ramen cup, and sat it down at the table. Next she walked over to the refrigerator. Let's see, Anko said aloud. I doubt he'd like sake very much, here we go. Every kid likes milk. She reached into the cabinet again and pulled out a small cup. After pouring the milk into the cup, she walked it over to him and sat down beside him. Naruto was quickly eating the ramen, as if he had never had a meal before in his life, or he never planned to have another meal. Anko sighed when she realized that he probably missed a lot of meals, and he ate like this to make sure he would have his fill before going hungry again. She slowly put her hand in his hair and patted his head. Naruto jumped at the touch, afraid that he had done something wrong. Anko saw this and did her best to calm him down. Hey, easy, she said. It's alright, I just thought you'd enjoy the ramen more if you slowed down to taste it. I promise that it's not going anywhere. There's no need to rush. Naruto nodded, and slowed down to eat, although still moving at a quickened pace. He must truly enjoy the stuff. Anko made a note to herself to buy some ramen and milk when she went shopping tomorrow. There was a comfortable silence between the two. Naruto finished his ramen and then Anko picked him up into her arms. I think someone needs a bath, she said to herself. She pinched her nose for emphasis. I bet I could write my name in the dirt that's on your face. Naruto giggled at this quietly, imagining the woman writing her name on his face by using her finger. Anko carried him to the small bathroom, and filled the tub a little bit. She then undressed Naruto and sat him inside of the tub. It took her about 20 minutes, but after a while she finished scrubbing the dirt off of his body. From there, she moved on to his hair. It was a tangled mess, but she had to clean it. Naruto's face winced a little as she scrubbed through the dirt in his hair. However, as she cleaned, Anko noticed a shine that it had to it. It was soft too. It felt almost as if she could lay on it and sleep, which it was quite possible. She pulled Naruto out of the tub and brushed his hair, just to find out that it extended just past his shoulders. The bangs were so long that they covered one of his eyes. I have an idea, she said. Anko picked him up with the towel wrapped around him and took him back to the bedroom. She took one of the kunai from her coat pocket, and slowly lifted the hair that covered his eye. Naruto was a little scared at this. Was she going to gouge his eye out? Was she going to attack him like the villagers did? He closed his eyes and prepared for the worst, only to hear a light slice. He opened his eyes and saw a small pile of hair form at his feet. Anko smiled. It'd be a shame to cover those eyes of yours. Anko said. Now, let's get you some clothes on. I don't need to see you running around naked. Naruto happily took her hand and they walked over to her dresser. She reached in and pulled out a long shirt. She then watched as he put it on, nearly disappearing from its massive size. She then reached into her top drawer and pulled out a small hair band, one like she used in her hair, and pulled Naruto's up into a ponytail, so it wouldn't get tangled while he slept. She sat Naruto on the bed, and excused herself to the bathroom, assuring him that she'd be right back. A few moments later, she returned wearing a long shirt similar to Naruto's and was carrying his small teddy bear. He took it from her happily and snuggled under the sheets to the bed. Anko then climbed in with him. He had a small grin on his face, one that was real instead of the grins he had earlier. Hey, Naruto, Anko asked as she turned off the lights. What? Naruto replied, still in a soft-spoken voice. How would you like it if we spent tomorrow with each other? I'll buy ya some clothes, toys, and maybe even some ninja supplies. Anko asked. She smiled at the prospect of raising a kid with a love of weaponry like her. What's a ninja? Naruto asked. Well, a ninja is a person who protects people. They fight to aid those in need, protect the village, and go on missions to various places, seeing the world as they do. Anko said. That sounds cool, Naruto said with a yawn. I wanna do that too. I wanna be the greatest ninja ever. Anko smiled and kissed the now sleeping Naruto on the forehead. She put her arms around him, and held him tight. There was no doubt about it in her head. She would raise and nurture this child just like he should be. The two slept through the night with waking up once. A smile was present on both of their faces. As nice as it was, night faded into day, and it was time to take Naruto into the village. Anko awoke early that morning, and went into the kitchen. She made a cup of coffee, and then sat down at the table, making a list of things she'd need for Naruto. Let's see, what things does the squirt need, she said to herself. Toys, clothes, a few books, some other things like food and milk. As much as I can't stand to say it, I doubt the runt could live on just dango and sake like me. She heard a loud yawn in the hallway and saw little Naruto walk into the kitchen. He still drug his teddy bear behind him. Hey, squirt, she shouted. Sleep good. Yup, Naruto shouted. He pumped his fist into the air for emphasis, and then climbed into the chair beside Anko. Whatcha doin', Anko-sama? Just Anko is fine, she said, patting him on the head. Anko-sama makes me sound old. Now, to answer your question, I'm writing down some stuff we're going to get you today. Really? Naruto asked. A glint in his eyes was apparent as he thought of the prospect of actually owning things other than his teddy bear. Yep, Anko replied with a wide grin. Tell me, what things you like to eat, Naruto? I like miso ramen, ooh, and beef ramen, pork ramen, and chicken too, he shouted. Anko laughed at the thought. He was almost addicted to the stuff as she was to dango. Naruto smiled happily as Anko wrote down some of the different kinds of ramen he mentioned. They then hopped down from the table. Naruto sat in the bedroom playing with his bear, while the girl freshened up in the bathroom. After a small amount of time, she emerged wearing her normal attire, a fishnet bodysuit, khaki mini skirt, and long brown trench coat. She tied her hitai around her head and scooped Naruto up in her arms. Ready to hit the town, squirt? She asked. Yep, he shouted. Let's go, Anko-chan. She leapt her way through the forest, until the duo reached Konoha. It was still early, so there weren't many people walking the street. If there was, they weren't paying attention to the boy. Knowing that Anko would kill them should they try to do something was enough to keep them at bay. They quickly made their way to the shopping district. The first thing they decided to do was to buy the boy some clothes. Right now, he was still wearing the long shirt he got from Anko last night. Tell me, Naruto, Anko said as they walked into the clothing store. What kind of clothes did you wear at the orphanage? I had a bright orange jumpsuit, he said as Anko put him down and took him by the hand. Just like the other kids, I washed it every month. Naruto-kun, didn't you have any other clothes? She asked. Nope, just the one, he replied. If they only gave him one outfit, they should have let him wash it more than once a month, she thought. Naruto noticed the frown on her face. Is something wrong, Anko-chan? He asked. She snapped out of her anger and smiled at the boy. Everything is just fine, Naruto. Anko said with a smile. Now let's get you some style. They walked around the store looking at various things. After many trial and errors, they picked 8 pairs of baggy black pants, 6 sleeveless black shirts, a pair of black boots, and much to Naruto's begging and happiness, a long black coat like Anko's. Next stop was the bookstore. Anko picked out a few kiddie books for Naruto, that had a few fairy tales in them, plus a book on parenting, since she was new to the whole thing. However, after reading the first page of the book, she tossed it back to the rack. She didn't need some book telling her how to raise a kid. As she was paying for the books, a Junin with silver hair entered the store. He immediately recognized the two. Anko simply waved to him as she saw him move to the corner of the adult section of the store. Who was that? Naruto asked. You look mad, was he a bad person? No, that was Ero Kakashi, Anko said as a smile worked its way to her face. You make sure to call him that every day, okay? Okay, Anko-chan. Naruto said with a smile. They went to the toy shop next. Anko bought Naruto a stuffed fox, several toy soldiers, and a large ball. It was about noon at that point, so she stopped to get the two some dango while they were on that side of town. Naruto had never had it before. His little hands picked up a stick, and he sniffed it like a little fox would. He then slowly took a nibble of it in his mouth and smiled happily. The two cleared 3 full plates in no time. Anko returned to the tower to drop off the things they had bought so far. Naruto played happily in the floor where a fighting ring of sorts was located. He was having his teddy bear and fox have a fight against the soldiers. Anko looked over at him from the balcony above and leapt over it, into the ring. Having fun, champ? She asked. Yep. Naruto replied. We need to go run some more errands, okay? She asked. Okay. Naruto replied. She picked up and tossed him into the air. Naruto giggled happily as she caught him in her arms and hugged him tight. She then put him on her shoulders and made her way back to town. It was about 4 p.m., so Anko made her way to the Hokage's tower. She walked through the entrance, and smiled as she passed Kurenai in the hallway. Hello, Anko, she said with a smile. Hello, Naruto. The Hokage has been expecting you. What? I'm not in trouble, am I? He asked. Naruto's smile began to fade some. Anko hugged the child tightly in her arms. Of course you ain't in trouble, squirt. Anko shouted. Naruto's smile returned. Hey, Kurenai. Yes, what is it, Anko? The Junin asked. I was wondering if you could keep an eye on my squirt here while I talk to the old man, she asked. You can, awesome, she shouted before Kurenai could even answer. Anko bent over and kissed Naruto on the cheek. You wait right there with Auntie Kurenai, and I'll be right back, okay? Naruto nodded and turned back to Kurenai as Anko walked into the Hokage's office. The old man was working on the paperwork sitting on his desk. He looked up when he saw Anko come in and smiled. Anko, I trust everything has gone well? He asked. Yes, Hokage-sama, Anko replied. Naruto has enjoyed himself, and I did as well. Have you made a decision? He asked. Yes, sir, Anko replied. I wish to make the adoption of Naruto Uzumaki official. All right, you may go, he said. What? Anko replied. He's your child now. The third replied. Take him home, and treat him well. I leave Mitarashi Naruto in your care from now on. Anko smiled and thanked the Hokage. The two walked out of the office and saw Naruto sitting Kurenai's lap, telling her about Anko's and his day. Naruto saw Anko walk out the door and hopped of Kurenai. Anko-chan, he shouted as he hugged her. Naruto-kun, Anko asked. Yes, he asked back. The Hokage would like to ask you something, she replied. The old man walked over to Naruto and patted him on the head. He smiled as Naruto looked up at him with those deep blue eyes. They were no longer filled with only hate, fear, and sadness, but rather a small sign of happiness was in them. He noticed that Anko had the same line too. Do you like being with Anko? The old man asked. Naruto nodded happily. Do you want to visit her more often? He asked. Naruto nodded again. Anko, do you like being with Naruto? She nodded. Would you like to visit him more often? She nodded again. Well then, Naruto, why don't you just live with her? He asked with a smile. What do you mean? He asked. Naruto, I adopted you today, Anko replied. She took the boy in her arms and smiled. Adopted? he asked. It means that I'm your new mommy, she answered back. I have a mommy now, he asked, his eyes growing wider. Yes, Anko replied. Naruto looked at her for only one moment. He then latched his arms around her and cried happily. Anko did as well. She hugged her son tightly, never wanting to let go. The Hokage smiled, and left the two alone. Kurenai did the same as well. With her son in her arms, Anko returned home. Naruto smiled as he had never been happier before. Anko awoke and looked at the small child sleeping happily beside her. It was hard to believe that just a few hours ago, she officially made Naruto her child, even so much as changing his last name to hers. While she still had doubts about what she should do now that she was officially responsible for the child, Anko knew that she had to be careful now. Any bad choice could negatively affect the child, while she also had to consider the possibilities of being too soft on him. She let out a slow yawn and decided to go ahead and get up for the day, seeing as how it was 7 in the morning anyhow. Let's see, what should the little squirt and I do today? She asked herself, sipping a small amount coffee in her cup. He could use a new playmate. I won't always be able to play with him and such, so it'd be nice for him to have someone his own age to keep him company. What, mommy? Naruto asked. Anko turned around as she saw the little boy rubbing his eyes sleepily. She still got goosebumps whenever he called her that. It made her feel happy that her being there was enough to make him happy. She knelt down to his level and kissed his forehead. I was just talking to myself, squirt, she said as she ran her hand through her hair. So did you sleep good? Yup, Naruto replied with a smile. Mommy, you make a good pillow. Anko almost fell over when she heard that. She felt a strange pressure on her while she was asleep last night, but just shook it off as lying in a weird position. She had no idea that it was Naruto who rolled into her and began to use her for a pillow. She prayed to Kami that he wasn't suddenly going to turn into Kakashi or something. Hey, anyways kid, I was thinking, how about we go visit some friends of mine today? Anko asked. They have a little girl about your age, I bet she'd love someone like you to play with. She noticed that Naruto looked down at the ground and started to move his foot in a circle around the floor. She put her hand on his shoulder and looked into his eyes. A small amount of fear was in his eyes. What's wrong? Anko asked. When I was at my old home with lots of kids, he began. None of them would play with me, they would hurt me and stuff, what if she's the same way? Anko picked the boy up into her arms and hugged him tightly. He looked at her face and saw the smile that always made him smile back. He returned the hug, but she noticed it was slightly tighter than normal. Naruto-kun, she told him with a smile. I promise that these people will not hurt you. They are my best friends, and if they like me, then they'll love you. Really? He asked. Believe it, she answered. Naruto giggled as she tickled his stomach some, and then put him down so he could go get ready. She sighed as she watched him run towards the room, following close behind. After helping Naruto get ready, she allowed him to play in the ring room, while she got herself cleaned and dressed. After finishing up, she made her way to Naruto's unofficial playroom, and jumped over the railing of the balcony. Naruto jumped into her arms and hugged her. Can I bring Mittens? He asked. He pointed down to the stuffed fox that he named Mittens, on account of the colored paws. Anko nodded, and picked up the fox. Naruto held onto it tightly as they jumped through the forest, towards Konoha. They landed in the village and began to head back for the shopping district of the village again. Naruto held her hand tightly as he noticed a few glares coming towards him. Relax, squirt, Anko said. No one's gonna want to try and hurt you with me here. Naruto felt reassured and lightened his grip some. As they turned the corner, Naruto noticed that they were heading for a small weapon shop. Not that he could read the sign or anything, but the large picture of a katana and several ninja stars told him that it was that kind of shop. Anko opened the door for him and then followed the boy inside. Naruto's eyes widened at all the various weapons that aligned the walls and display cases. He had never seen so many things like this before, though he remembered hearing about a few of them from a story Anko read to him last night. Behind the counter, he spotted a man working on polishing a katana. "We'll be closing for lunch soon, so unless you have business, I ask that you please come back later," the man said. "Ah, come on, Ken. Is that any way to talk to a lady as sexy as me?" Anko shouted with a huge grin. "What? Oh, it's just you, Anko-san." Ken replied with a smirk. Yeah, Anko said to herself. "So how's business going?" "Pretty good," Ken replied as he placed the katana in a display case behind him. "A little slow, but once the Chunin exams start back up in a few weeks, things will pick up." "Good to know," Anko replied. It was at that moment that Ken saw Naruto hiding behind Anko's leg. He peeked out from behind it as the man knelt down beside him and smiled. Naruto sheepishly smiled back. The man rubbed his hair and stood up to Anko's level. "So, who's the little guy?" he asked. "A boyfriend or something?" "Get real," Anko replied as she picked Naruto up and held him in her arms. "This is my squirt." "Your squirt?" Ken asked. "I don't remember you having a kid." "That's 'cause I adopted him yesterday," Anko replied with a large grin. "How I feel for the poor boy," Ken replied. Suddenly, a fist was sent to the back of his head. A slightly small woman looked at him with anger, which then turned to one of happiness as she saw her best friend. Anko walked up and hugged her friend. "You been doing all right, Cammy?" Anko asked with a smile. "More or less," Cammy replied. "The little one is getting excited about starting at the academy next week." "Ah, that's right," Anko replied. "Call the kid. I got someone for her to meet." Cammy nodded and walked out back. She was gone for about 10 minutes, and finally returned with her hands on a small girl's shoulders. The small girl had her hair up in two small buns. Her little brown eyes seemed focused on the small boy in Anko's arms. She wore a simple pink, Chinese-style jumpsuit. Anko walked over to the girl and smiled. "Have you been behaving yourself like we talked about?" Anko asked. "Yes, ma'am," the girl replied while jumping. "Good, then as a reward, you get to have a playmate for a while." Anko replied. "Who is it?" the girl asked. "Naruto, I'd like you to meet Tenten." "Tenten, this is my boy, Naruto," Anko announced. She put the small boy on the ground and Tenten walked towards him, studying him as she walked around. "Your name is funny, and you have whiskers on your face," Tenten replied. Naruto looked down at the ground in shame. "You look like fun, though." Naruto smiled when he heard this. "Let's go play outside. We can play ninja," Tenten shouted. "How do you play that?" Naruto asked shyly. He held his fox close for comfort. "I'll show you, silly," Tenten said as she pulled him along. "You can bring your friend too," she shouted while pointing at the stuffed fox. Anko smiled as she watched Naruto be led outside by the girl. His cheeks were blushing as he turned for a second to see Anko wave and blow him a kiss. She sighed as she sat on the couch and relaxed for a moment. "So, how did it happen?" Ken asked. "What do you mean?" Anko asked. "The adoption of Naruto," Ken asked. "We all know who he is, and that he was at the orphanage, but how'd you manage to get a hold of him?" "He was attacked the other night," Anko said in a low voice. "We know why, but I can't stand it. It sickens me the way people treat him, because of something inside of him, without even stopping to think about how they are really two different beings." "So you decided to take action?" Cammy asked. Anko nodded. "Good," Ken said with a smile. "The boy deserves someone with a good heart like yours to raise him." "Thanks," Anko said with a smile. "By the way, I have a favor to ask you." "Of course," Ken replied. "Naruto is welcome anytime to come and play with Tenten, and we'd be happy to watch him during a mission for you, should you need to leave." Anko thanked the two and walked over to the back, looking out the window at Naruto and Tenten playing. "Do you see him, Naruto?" Tenten asked. "Yep. He's got a lot of people around him," Naruto replied as his small face peeked out from behind the bushes. "Naruto," Tenten replied. "Those aren't just people, they're the bad guys. You need to remember that." "Sorry," Naruto replied. So, how do we save mittens? We sneak attack, Tenten answered. Sneak attack? Naruto questioned. Yup, Tenten said. That means that we fight them without being seen. Here, take these. Tenten reached into a small pouch on her belt and pulled out 10 shuriken, handing them to Naruto. He looked at them with a question in his eyes, and then back at Tenten. He was confused. What do I do with these? He asked. Naruto, you baka, she said with a giggle. You threw them at the bad guys. Try to hit as many as possible, okay? Naruto nodded. Both he and Tenten got on the ground, and crawled closer to the bad guys, which were really just practice dummies. When they stopped crawling, Tenten nodded at Naruto, who nodded back. Anko began to watch with sudden interest. They both rose up and threw 10 shuriken each towards the dummies. Tenten hit the dummies with all of her shuriken, something that was to be expected since she was the daughter of a weapons expert. Naruto, however, surprised her. He threw all of his, and managed to hit the dummies with 7 of the 10 shuriken. Anko, that was amazing, Ken said as he looked out at Naruto and Tenten celebrating the rescue of mittens. Have you been training him or something? No, I mean, I thought about it, but I haven't done anything yet. Hell, the only time I mentioned the idea to him of even becoming a shinobi was the other night, and that was just to help calm him down and such for the first night at the tower. Anko replied. Maybe you should. Kami replied. He seems to have some natural talent, and he seems to enjoy playing ninja with Tenten as well. Yeah, Anko replied. She let Naruto and Tenten play for about another hour, and then the two went elsewhere. Naruto promising Tenten to play again later in the week. Tenten happily agreed. Anko walked with Naruto's hand in hers, listening to Naruto's story of the ninja game. They stopped by the ramen stand, where they had some lunch, before she took Naruto to the park to play. Have fun, squirt, Anko said as she sat on a bench. Naruto nodded and ran off with mittens in his arms to play. He was making his way around the park, noticing several kids playing with each other. A small girl with pink hair was playing tag with a little girl with blonde hair. Another boy with a lazy look in his eye was swinging beside another boy who was eating a bag of chips. They all looked happy, but something caught Naruto's eye. Inside the small sandbox, sat a girl with a sad look on her face. She had pale eyes, and short hair, which was a little shorter than Naruto's. She wore a small, brown jacket. Naruto walked up to her and sat beside her. Is something wrong? He asked. What do you mean? The girl asked as she looked at him. You look sad. Mittens said that I should see if you were okay. Naruto replied. Oh, I'm okay, the girl replied. No, I know that look. Naruto told her. You're lonely. So, why don't we play together? Why you'd play with me? The girl asked. She began to push her index fingers together and fidget with them. Yep, Naruto replied as he pumped his fist into the air. My name is Naruto. Who are you? My name is Hinata. She replied, shyly. Anko smiled as she saw the two engage in little conversation. The girl stuttering through almost every word. Naruto encouraging her to be more open. She laughed at the sight, as a silver-haired Junin sat beside of her. So how are things with the Mitarashis? Kakashi asked. Great until you showed up. Anko replied with a smirk. Hey, I can tell Naruto will be interesting once he's been raised by you. Kakashi joked. Seriously though, how are things going? Good. She replied. I took Naruto out for the whole day. He's already made 2 friends it seems. Really? Kakashi asked. Yep. Anko replied. He seems to have taken a shine to Ken and Kami's girl, Tenten, and now he seems to be making fast friends with the girl over there. Kakashi looked over towards the sandbox where Anko pointed. Sure enough, there was Naruto and the girl she mentioned, laughing and carrying on as if they were the best of friends. However, there was something interesting about the girl in view. Something wrong? Anko asked. Is she? Kakashi began. He looked closer at the girl beside Naruto. She is. She is what? Anko asked. She's a Hyuga. Kakashi said. Well, what do you know? Anko replied. Looks like Naruto can make friends with anyone if they're willing to accept him as the boy and not as a demon. Be it a family of weapon merchants, or the daughter of one of the most prestigious clans in the village. This isn't something to take lightly. I mean, eventually Hinata will enter the academy like the others. While Naruto, Kakashi began. While Naruto what? Anko said. She stood up and looked Kakashi dead in the eye. Well, let's just say that the academy may not be the best choice for him in life. Kakashi replied. Most of the villagers and such already hate and fear him. Because of the demon. Anko replied. Yes, but they may do so even more if he were to become a ninja. Kakashi replied. No, they'll be afraid of the demon, not him. Anko replied. They'll just blame him for anything that goes wrong. You're okay with that? Kakashi asked. He'll be too. Anko replied. What do you mean? Kakashi replied. He's a child, but he's strong. He's still willing to make friends, something that's shown by how he's befriended 2 people in one day, one of them he met on his own. Anko explained. I think that being a genin may be good for him. Good. Kakashi answered. What do you mean? Anko asked. The Hokage sent me with the mission for you to accept for the next 8 years. Kakashi explained. He wants you train Naruto to be able to enter the academy, and become a genin. If I refuse? She asked. I'm not fully sure if I want Naruto to become one. If you refuse, I will take Naruto to raise and train on my own. Kakashi asked. Hey, you bastards planned this from the start, Anko replied. Ken and Kami were in on it too. Kakashi said with a grin. They planned on you stopping by. The fact that Naruto and Tenten took to each other so well was just a lucky event. I really hate you guys sometimes, you know that? Anko asked with a grin. Let the Hokage know that I'll begin Naruto's training first thing in the morning. Anko put her hand on his shoulder and looked at Kakashi. Besides, he'd better a better ninja with my influence than yours. Meanwhile, Naruto and Hinata had just finished building a sand castle. They were relaxing in the grass by the box. Naruto's fox sat between them. Hinata? Naruto asked. Why yes. The shy girl responded. Do you wanna be my friend? He asked. Why yes. I do, but why you have to be mine too, okay? She asked back. Okay. Naruto replied as he sat up. Pinky promise? Hinata asked. Naruto nodded and placed his pinky in Hinata's. Anko smiled as she walked over to Naruto, who jumped into his mother's arms. He said goodbye to Hinata, promising to be back again another day to play. Did you have fun today, Squirt? Anko asked as the two headed home. Yep. Naruto replied with a yawn. There was a silence as the two returned home. Anko prepared Naruto a light dinner, gave him a bath, and read him a story. She noticed that Naruto was unusually quiet, until she tucked him into bed anyways. Mommy? Naruto asked as Anko brushed his long hair. What's up, Squirt? Anko asked. What's the academy? Naruto asked back. Ten-chan said that she was going to start going there next week, and then Hinata-chan said that she'd be going there too next year. The academy is where they begin to train new ninja, she replied. You remember that story we read last night? The ninja went to school to learn how to be one. That's cool, Naruto answered. Anko thought deep and hard about her conversation with Kakashi she had earlier. She was scared to ask him. What if this just ended up hurting him in the end? Then again, was it worth the risk to lose him about something like this? Anko took a deep breath and began. Naruto-kun, she began. How would you like to go to the academy too? To learn about becoming a ninja? Naruto asked. Just like the one in the story. A small excitement in his voice was building. Would I get to be with Hinata-chan and Ten-chan? Well, Ten-chan would be a year ahead of you, but there's a good chance that Hinata will be with you. Anko explained. I wanna do it. I wanna be a ninja. He shouted. I'm gonna be the greatest ninja ever, and everyone will want to be my friend because of it. Anko smiled at his enthusiasm. He reminded her of herself when she was little. Anko smiled and hugged him tightly as he leapt into her arms. Alright, we'll begin your training in the morning. Anko replied. We're behind your friends, so we have a lot to catch up on. Anko and Naruto climbed into bed and turned out the lights. Anko fell asleep almost instantly, but Naruto lay there, staring at the ceiling. The thoughts of him being a ninja raced through his mind. He pictured himself in place of the ninja in the story they read the other night. He was saving the village, being cheered, and befriended by everyone in the village. Naruto let out a low yawn, and allowed sleep to take over for the night. Again, Anko awoke early. She had to admit that she was a slight bit worried for what could happen to Naruto in life. Making a decision like this is one that could change everything for him in an instant. At the same time though, she was excited. Naruto could earn wide acceptance from the village. Maybe even being regarded as a hero. He could also get to interact with other kids his age, allowing him to make even more friends. She quietly got herself ready, and began to get things ready for the two of them to begin training. She took charts and various weaponry to the room below, aka Naruto's playroom. She then brought various training dummies out and sat them around the ring. Now that that was taken care of, she went upstairs to get her squirt in training. She entered the room and looked at the small boy sleeping. She gently bent down and scooped him up in her arms. From there, it was straight to the ring room below. She smiled. Slowly the sleeping form of Naruto was turned upside down, Anko now holding him by his ankles. "Oh, Naruto," she called out dreamily. Naruto opened his eyes slowly. "Time to wake up, maggot." Naruto's eyes suddenly flashed wide open as Anko dropped him. He hit against the ring below him. Grabbing his head, he yelled in pain and looked up with a small amount of anger in his eyes due to his rude awakening. What is it? What was that for, Mama?" Naruto asked. Anko smacked him in the back of the head. "Wrong. Every morning, from 6 a.m. to 5 p.m., we will be training for your entrance into the academy." Anko screeched. "During this time, you will not refer to me as a mom, but as your sensei, and I intend to be referred to as such. You got that down, maggot?" "Why yes, Anko-sensei." Naruto replied. "Good," she responded. "Now let's start things out with a few trial and errors. First, let's see what kinda chakra you got." "Chakra?" Naruto asked. "You know, like in that story from the other night." Anko replied. "Oh, I can do that," Naruto replied. He stood closing his eyes for a minute, and then began to look like he was concentrating on something intently. Beads of sweat began to form on his forehead, as if he was in a struggle to do this. After about 2 minutes a very, very faint blue wave came from him. Anko was afraid of this. He lacked a mass amount, and what little bit he could produce, he had trouble getting out. "Just like I was afraid," Anko said. "You lack the ability to be able to easily produce chakra." "What?" Naruto asked, his blue eyes full of question. Anko walked over to a small chart and pointed at the picture. Yeah, see, the body has something called a chakra network. It carries chakra through the body, allowing us to use skills that ninja use, like the ability to make copies, teleport, things like that." Anko answered. "In other words, to become a successful ninja you need to be able to produce more chakra through these." "You got it." "I think so," Naruto replied. "Don't worry, it'll become easier to grasp as we begin to train more. At any rate, let's move on to the next test," Anko said. Naruto nodded and followed her over to a small case. She bent down and opened the box, revealing kunai, shuriken, and throwing stars. Anko noticed Naruto's eyes widen as he saw all of these. She realized that he must be thinking back to playing with Tenten earlier. "You remember using these yesterday, maggot?" Anko asked. Naruto nodded. "Yeah, Anko-sensei. Ten-chan and I used them when playing ninja," he answered. "Are we going to play too?" Anko once again smacked the back of his head. "We ain't here to play, maggot," she replied. "We're here to train. Now grab 10 of those shuriken. I need to make sure that you didn't just get lucky when you hit the targets yesterday." Naruto nodded and took 10 of the shuriken. He then walked over to face one of the dummies, standing directly across from it. He closed his eyes for a minute and then opened them up. "On my count," Anko said. 1, 2, 3. Naruto threw all the shuriken at the dummy. He closed his eyes as he listened to them make their impact. Next he slowly opened his eyes, to see how he had done with this part of the test. Anko was already over at the dummy writing something down on a notepad. She looked back at Naruto. Did I do good, Anko-sensei? He asked. Meh, she said to herself. You got about 6 out of 10, maggot. Not as good as yesterday, but you are definitely further along than you are with Chakra, or with the shuriken anyways. Grab 5 of those kunai and try to hit the dummy with them now. Naruto nodded and walked over to the case. He grabbed 5 of the said weapon, and then once again returned to his previous spot to resume the test. He once again took a deep breath and threw them towards the dummy. Anko walked towards the dummy, and once again jotted something down in her book. 4 out of 5. She replied. Not bad for a maggot. Naruto smiled at his accomplishment, but a stern glare from Anko told him not to be celebrating yet. He quieted down and waited for the woman to instruct him on what came next. Alright, Anko said as she marked something down in her book. Your skills with weapons are definitely above average for your age. Don't let it go to your head though, maggot. It's still far from perfect. At any rate, let's test your strength. Anko and Naruto walked out to another dummy. This was suspended by a wire. It swung lightly back and forth as if it was suspended just a while ago. She noticed a small amount of confusion in Naruto's eyes again and sighed. She knew she should be patient, but she was not used to training anyone before. This is to see how strong you are, she explained without being asked. I want to see how strong your taijutsu is. Taijutsu? Naruto asked. Fighting skills. Anko replied. How well you fight using your hands and legs. Depending on how strong your attacks are, we'll know how hard we'll need to train you. Okay, Naruto replied. He walked forward and stood in a stance of sorts. Right away, Anko noted that it was absurd. Should he have been in a real fight right now, he'd have been taken at least 6 times before his opponent would even need to blink. She made note of this and then watched as he began to strike the dummy. It barely, if even that, moved. To make matters worse, Naruto was clearly putting everything he had behind his blows. The sweat that was forming on him. Despite his shortcomings, the boy was trying, and she knew his lack of skills was not completely his fault. With always being on the run from someone, it would be hard to improve oneself. She decided to take a more relaxed tone. Alright, Squirt, here's the deal. Anko replied. Your weapon skills are good, a little more training and you'll be the best one in your class. However, your command of chakra and taijutsu are not so good. You are very weak in both categories. Oh, I'm sorry, Naruto replied looking down. Don't sweat it, that's what this test was here to do. To find your strengths and weaknesses and practice to make them stronger. Anko replied. Now tell me, can you handle the training? Why yes, Naruto said, still looking down at the ground. What? Anko asked. I said yes, Naruto replied a little louder this time. Speak up, damn it. Anko shouted. I said yes, Naruto screamed. I wanna be a ninja. I wanna be stronger. I'll do it. Good, now go get dressed. Anko replied. We have a lot of things to do. Naruto nodded and ran to the bedroom to get dressed. Anko watched as he ran off and began to turn to leave. However, before she left, she threw a kunai out at one of the pillars. Suddenly Kakashi jumped out from behind one, narrowly dodging the kunai. He then noticed a small trickle of blood go down his cheek, and suddenly Anko was right behind him, licking the blood from the cut. Had enough eavesdropping, pervert? She asked. My apologies, Kakashi said with a smirk. I hope I didn't offend. Alright, so what do you and the old man want now? Anko replied as she pushed Kakashi away. Is it that obvious? Kakashi asked as he pulled his book out and sat in the middle of the ring. So far, Naruto and I only hear from you if the old guy wants something, so what is it? Anko asked, trying to ignore the fact that he pulled the book out again. I'm here to ask how things were during your analysis of Naruto's default skills. Kakashi replied as he turned a page. Although I don't see where it's any of your or the old man's damn business, Anko began. He has a lot of work to do. His taijutsu and chakra are both weak. I see, Kakashi interrupted. However, Anko resumed, slightly pissed at him for not letting her finish. His skills with weapons are above those of normal age level. Enough of the crap though, what's the real reason you came? I wanted to talk about how you're going to teach Naruto. Kakashi replied. We all know that a majority of the techniques and fighting styles you know are derived from a certain man who specialized in snakes. What the hell's your point? Anko asked. The reference to the ninja referred to by Kakashi was enough to anger the woman. She didn't much care to relive that point in her life, even if it only brought up memories of the past. Just a warning, Kakashi said. Choose how you train the boy lightly. The snake style is a dangerous one. If Naruto's prisoners should happen to awaken, then we'll worry about that when the time comes. Anko replied. Until then, you and the old man keep your damn noses out of my damn business. Naruto is not his to worry about anymore, and I'll train him to fight how I want. Interfere with how I raise my son again, and I'll make it to where you'll never have one. It was right after this that Naruto appeared on top of the balcony. Anko shot him a smile and turned to leave, but not before kneeing Kakashi in his special area. The Junin fell down while Anko looked at him with a grin. I'd make sure to get that looked at, by the way, she concluded. She leapt to the balcony and took Naruto in her arms. The two left the tower, leaving Kakashi to collect himself and then head to the hospital. Naruto asked why Anko did that to Kakashi, but she simply assured the boy that they were just sparring. What are we doing here? Naruto asked as they arrived at the training ground areas of the village. Laps. Anko replied. Every day, we will begin your day by running laps around Konoha. How many times do I have to run around it? Naruto asked. You know, squirt. Anko replied. I don't recall saying. Now move. Anko tossed a kunai at him, causing Naruto to run. Anko took off after him. Anyone who happened to be in the area of the training grounds watched as the two ran. Naruto pushing to go as fast as possible, Anko threatening to use him for target practice and never letting him eat ramen again. If one didn't know any better, it was almost as if they were both crazy. This continued on until Anko ordered him to stop after about the 15th lap around the village. How do you feel? Anko asked. She looked a bit flushed, but Naruto was drenched in sweat. My legs, sore, Naruto managed to get out. Good. Now get up, it's time to work on your taijutsu. Anko replied. She pointed to a nearby training dummy. 100 leg strikes, using each leg, 100 times each, followed by 100 punches, using both arms, 100 times each. After that, 100 more of both arms and legs, but alternate between each blow. In other words, one strike for left leg, then right hand, and then left hand. Naruto looked at her like she was crazy. I said now, she shouted, firing a kunai that nearly grazed his cheek. Naruto nodded and ran to the dummy. He began to kick it just like she ordered. Anko shouted each number as he kicked. Then he began the punching drills. Anko sitting in front of him, eating a cup of ramen, just to make him mad. The real point was to use the anger to increase the power he was using, thus making the blows stronger. Immediately after that, he moved right on to the final part of the taijutsu exercises. Anko tossed a kunai at him with a sadistic grin every time he started to slow down. Naruto sighed as he fell to the ground after the drills. Sweat was literally pouring off his body. Here, Anko said. She handed him a bottle of water. Naruto took several sips and smiled. Let me see your knuckles, maggot. Anko ordered. Naruto handed her his hands. Anko quickly, yet carefully inspected them. No bleeding. Anko commented. Alright, get up and do it again. Naruto was about to argue, but remembered her promise of no ramen forever, and using him for target practice. He rose to his feet and began to punch and kick once again. Anko smiled with pride as she watched him. She had to admit one thing, the kid had determination. Naruto eventually finished his taijutsu training. Anko wrapped his hands to slow the bleeding, knowing the fox would aid in healing. What's next, Anko-sensei? Naruto asked. Anko smiled and reached into a bag. A large pile of books appeared on the boy's lap, his eyes were as large as plates from the sheer number. Anko laughed at his expression. It was too easy not to. What are all these books? Naruto asked. Books that you'll need to learn so you can begin to grasp the beginning of the techniques you'll learn with me. Anko replied. These teach the basics of poison and snakes. Poisons? Snakes? Naruto asked with intense interest. Can I see? Fine, but I'm only gonna show these once, for now, Anko replied. Anko stood up and made several quick hand signs. They went by too fast for Naruto to tell what they were, but as soon as she finished, she shot her hands forward and two large snakes shot out of her jacket sleeves, one snake per sleeve. She smirked as she saw Naruto's amazed face. Like that? Anko asked. Naruto nodded. You'll love this. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a scroll. Biting her thumb, she quickly flicked the scroll open with the other hand, and ran her bleeding thumb across the scroll. Suddenly a large cloud of smoke puffed through the area, revealing a massive snake. Anko explained that she was just demonstrating something and the snake muttered while vanishing. Anko looked over and laughed as Naruto flipped open one of the books immediately. She knew that training him would be more fun than she thought. Slow down, kid, Anko said as she pulled him onto her lap. These books won't do you much good on your own, until you learn how to read. Anko began to read from one of the books while Naruto paid close attention. She finally called the training to a close for the day. They stopped off for some ramen, and then headed for home. After all his training, Naruto felt sore, and she could tell it. Anko laughed as he drug himself into the bed. Tired? Squirt? Anko asked. Yeah, Naruto replied. A low yawn escaped him. Then get some rest, Anko replied as she pulled the covers on him. Because we'll be doing this every day, for 1 year. Naruto watched as she walked across the room and pulled out some weights. Starting next week, I'm going to attach these to your arms and legs. They weigh about 10 pounds each. Anko explained. After the next 3 weeks, the weight of each one will double, and then after another 3 weeks, I'll add 10 more pounds to each one. When will we finish? Naruto asked. Next year, Anko replied. Now rest up, maggot. We're doing all this again tomorrow. Training was off to a slow start, but after about 2 months, Naruto was making progress. His strength and stamina have definitely improved as a result of his taijutsu training, coupled with his weights and laps around the village. His chakra was becoming stronger as a result as well, also due to a meditation period he did each night before dinner. Anko watched with intent eyes as her son's strength and power was increasing before her eyes. He was so much different than he was at the start of the training. She snapped out of her thoughts as Naruto finished pummeling another dummy. Alright, maggot, bring it in, Anko called. Naruto nodded and sat before Anko. You've been training quite a bit. The amount of chakra you now control is good, so I figure it's time you started working on your first jutsu. Really? Naruto asked. Which one is it? Snakes? Shooting needles? Actually, we need to stick with the basics before I start teaching you special stuff. Anko replied. It's needed to graduate from the academy, and the earlier you start working on it, then the sooner you'll have a mastery over it. Okay, Naruto said. So what is it? What jutsu are ya going to teach me? I'm gonna teach ya the Bunshin jutsu. Anko replied. The graduation to the rank of a genin has always required that you be able to make a clone of yourself. The clone serves a decoy for dangerous missions and such. It's important that you learn this jutsu, as well as one other we'll work on later. So what do I do? Naruto asked. First, you need to think of yourself. Anko replied. Think about what you feel, what you're wearing, and everything about your body. From your blonde hair, right down to your blue eyes. Easy, Naruto shouted. Anko punched him in the back of the head. Let me finish, before you try it out, damn it, Anko replied. Now, for the next part, you need to focus on your chakra. This is the tricky part because if you don't focus enough, or use too much and the clone will fail, and as a result, you will too. Naruto nodded, and this time kept his mouth shut to let her continue. Now the last part you need to learn is hand signs. This part is fairly simple, because there are only 3 involved. Anko put her hands up close to her and took a breath. Pay attention. You need to make the following hand signs. Anko began making gestures with her hand. Rabbit, dog, rabbit, and then, Anko said. A dark purple wave emitted from her and suddenly in a cloud of smoke, another Anko stood beside the original. Naruto's eyes were wide as he looked at the clone. Wow, she looks just like you. Naruto shouted. Yeah, both of the Ankos replied. Now you try. Naruto nodded and began to focus. First he focused on himself. His clothes, his eyes, his hair, everything. Next he began focus on his chakra, slowly trying to push it out, not wanting to overdo it. Next he did the signs, rabbit, dog, rabbit, just like she said. The blue chakra began to slowly emit from him and finally a puff of smoke exploded beside Naruto. Anko waited for the smoke to clear, interested to see how her son did. Naruto stood with excitement in his eyes. He knew this clone would be great. The smoke cleared, and both Naruto and Anko saw a pale, sickly Naruto. He was lying on the ground, passed out from exhaustion. Both Anko and Naruto almost fell over. What? Naruto asked. I did everything you said. What is this? It's a clone, Anko responded. A sickly, horrible clone that I want to kill to put out its misery, but a clone nonetheless. So what's wrong with it? He asked. Not enough chakra, Anko replied. The only problem was the amount you used. I'll try again, just give me a sec. Naruto insisted. I don't believe it, Anko thought. I expected him to be stronger from the training, but to have these results already, the fact that he almost succeeded on the clone jutsu in one try, this boy will be incredible. Alright, Squirt, give it another shot. Anko ordered. Naruto nodded and tried again. Anko continues to teach the boy various jutsus. After he mastered the Bunshin jutsu, they began to work on some more. In a matter of another month, Naruto had the Bunshin jutsu, substitution, and was slowly starting to get the hang of henge. It was during 1 week that Anko had to run a mission to the land of waves, so Kakashi was put in charge of helping the boy with his henge jutsu lessons. Alright, Naruto, Kakashi said while reading his book. Transformation is the last of 3 basic jutsus you need for the genin graduation exam. Alright, Arrow Kakashi. Naruto cheered. Show me how to do it. Kakashi cringed at the add-on Anko had told Naruto to use. Every time he watched him for a bit, Naruto called him it. Kakashi also had a score to settle for the kick to the crotch that Anko gave him a while ago as well. Suddenly, an idea went off in his head. Actually, there isn't much to tell or show. Kakashi explained. He flipped through his book and found the picture that he wanted to use. Just make the hand signs rabbit, cat, ox, and ox. While focusing on a picture or object, and then you got it. That's it? Naruto asked. Yes. Kakashi replied with a smirk. Here, use this for a guide. He showed the picture from his book, revealing a slender blonde woman. She was nude, her hair in pigtails, and oddly enough blue eyes like Naruto. Naruto studied the picture and closed his eyes. Kakashi interjected before he started. Remember, Naruto, Kakashi said, this jutsu is different. The more chakra you use, the more real the transformation looks. Naruto nodded and went back to focusing. He allowed more chakra to push through. The most he ever used for one jutsu. He was soon devoured in a puff of smoke. When it cleared, the woman in the picture was now standing before Kakashi. He quickly stuffed a tissue in his nose to stop a nosebleed. Very good. When your mother returns today, make sure you show her this. In fact, transform into the same woman. Kakashi explained. Naruto followed Kakashi's orders. When Anko arrived home and told him to show her the transformation jutsu, Naruto turned into the blonde, naked woman from the picture. Anko wasted no time in smacking Naruto in the back of the head, demanding where he learned that. Naruto told her. Anko sent him to bed for the night. Anko left to find Kakashi. Kakashi was admitted to the hospital for a broken arm and injured crotch that he got by mysterious circumstances. The next few months were spent practicing sparring. Naruto had 3 kinds of sparring to do. Anko decided that Naruto's 2 best friends would be able to aid in this part, which would not only make her son happy getting to spend more time with his friends, but aid them in their training and such too. Naruto practiced taijutsu with Hinata every morning, and in the afternoon, he practiced with weaponry skills with Tenten in the afternoon. Training with a Hyuga, how do you manage that? Ken asked while watching one day. Hokage's orders. She replied. Her mother was more than happy to let her help Naruto. Despite the clan's feelings, it's Hinata's mother's wish for her to have a friend as opposed to relentless training. Anko replied. Good, nice to know one of those people have common sense. Ken replied. The two watched as Naruto and Hinata practiced. They appeared to be on equal ground. Had Naruto attempted this at the start of his training, he'd have possibly been grounded into dirt by the girl. Hinata was still shy, but she felt more relaxed around Naruto, as if she didn't need to be afraid. After a busy morning of training, Naruto and Hinata said goodbye, and then head for his lunch. After that it was straight to Tenten's house for his weapon-styled sparring. Naruto was good at weapons just like always, but being a weapon merchant's daughter gave her the advantage. Naruto enjoyed spending time with Tenten, and would ask her things about the academy, proudly announcing that he would be going there and graduating in the head of his class, with Hinata right behind him. Naruto finished his training with Tenten for the day and was on his way home with Anko, when suddenly a loud, obnoxious voice seemed to scream out from the distance. Anko-chan, it's good to see you. I trust that the power of youth is burning in both you and your son. He cried. That voice, Anko said. Why now? What is it, Mom? Naruto asked. I figured you meet them sooner or later, might as well get it over with, Anko sighed. Slowly she turned around with her hand on Naruto's shoulder. Naruto's eyes widened at the spectacle. Before him stood a man, with massive eyebrows, a neon green jumpsuit, and tacky orange leg warmers. Beside the large man, stood a miniature version of himself. Mommy, Naruto whispered. Who are these people? Why do they have caterpillars on top of their eyes? The tall man in green nearly fell over at this. Anko was on the ground laughing wildly. She managed to get back to her feet, holding her sides from laughing so hard. Her face was red from the laughter. Naruto, this is Maida Guy, and his clone Rock Lee, she introduced. So you're Naruto? Guy shouted. It is an honor to meet you. Lee, don't be shy. Introduce yourself. Yes, Guy-sensei. Lee shouted. Mitarashi Naruto, it is an honor to meet you. I can already see the fire of youth burning within you. I would be honored if you were to spar with me. Lee, that was beautiful, Guy said as a tear ran down his face. Lee looked at Guy. Both of them smiled as a sunset appeared out of nowhere. Lee, Guy-sensei. Lee, Guy-sensei. Lee, Guy-sensei. Anko slipped her hands of Naruto's eyes so he wouldn't have to see the next part of Lee and Guy hugging each other in the sunset. Anko sighed as the display ended and she cleared her throat to get the two's attention. Guy turned around and looked at the two. Listen, Guy, if there isn't anything you need, I need to get Naruto home, we still have a lot of training, Anko began. Ah, training for the Ninja Academy no doubt. Guy shouted. Well, yeah, Anko began only to be interrupted again. I sense a strong power within you, Naruto. Please, please fight me. Lee shouted. Can I have one more sparring session, Mom? Naruto asked. He looked at her with his big blue eyes, something that she found almost impossible to turn down. Fine, Anko sighed. Just one moment. Anko walked up to Guy and pulled him away for a minute. She took him away from the others and pushed him up against the wall. She looked at him like a lion about to catch its prey. Listen to me, Guy, she began. Lee is a lot stronger than Naruto. I won't deny that, but should any major harm come to my kid, then it's going to be you who pays for it, and I'll make sure you never teach another genin or academy student again, you got it? She pressed a kunai against Guy for emphasis. Of course. Guy said. I assure Lee will not harm the child. Good. Anko replied. Now, let's get over to training ground 13. The four made their way to the said area. Naruto and Lee both stood in the middle of a ring of sorts. Guy stood in the middle, while Anko stood off to the side, picking her teeth with a dango stick. Guy announced the rules of the fight. Taijutsu would be the only means of combating. No ninjutsu was to be used. Anko cleared her throat and shot a glance at Guy. The man then added that should either hear Anko say the match was over, then it would be over. The match started, and ended 5 minutes later. Naruto was no match for Lee, which was expected, seeing as how he was being trained by the best taijutsu masters of the village. Lee was running complete circles around Naruto, slamming his legs and fists into the poor child. Still, Naruto climbed to his feet, and insisted on continuing. It wasn't until Anko had to hold the boy in her arms that he stopped trying to fight Lee. Anko was worried. He didn't just lose to the child, he was devastated. She expected Naruto to call it quits, that he'd want to stop his training. She couldn't have been more wrong. Naruto shouted out to Lee that he better watch out, because next time he would be the winner. Lee smiled and accepted. Anko smiled. Naruto had made yet another friend. Why she would have preferred it not to be one of the green-clad clones, if it made him happy, that was all that mattered. Naruto continued to train for the remainder of the year. He worked until he had the 3 basic jutsus mastered. His weapon skills were amazing, and thanks to the now combined efforts of Lee and Hinata, he was quite good at taijutsu. Time sped forward until Naruto reached it. His first day of the ninja academy. He felt nervous. His stomach in knots. He had just finished packing his bag for the big day. How ya doin', squirt? Anko asked. Naruto jumped at the sound of her voice and threw a kunai at her immediately. Anko simply caught it between her fingers. Too slow, she grinned. Crap, Naruto replied. After living with the woman for a full year, it would be an understatement to say he picked up a few habits. He was now almost, if not as sadistic as Anko. He loved making big entrances, and began pulling pranks with the aid of Anko. His favorite one involved one they did against Kakashi. The man had walked by one day after Naruto and Anko had finished a chakra lesson. Due to Anko's influence, he had begun to hate perverts as well, yet he smiled brightly when he saw Kakashi walk by. Hey, Mom, he called. I got an idea. Really? She said as she saw Kakashi. What's up? She bent over and whispered in her ear. Anko stood up and laughed to herself. It was such a great idea. She'd have to be crazy not to do it. She agreed and went into hiding. Naruto moved stealthfully to Kakashi. He had an edge thanks to his training with Anko. Naruto made quickly transformed into the woman shown to him by Kakashi, and to top it off, he used a henge to hide his whisker marks and make his hair brown. Kakashi looked up just in time to see the disguised Naruto. His eyes bugged out, and nearly got a nosebleed, until he remembered it was Naruto. Naruto, doing that in public, in the middle of the day no less, is not the best way to do that. Kakashi said. Ah, you recognized me? Naruto asked as he turned back to normal. I taught you the trick, it's not that hard to figure out, Kakashi replied as he put his book away. Damn, Naruto replied. You got me. Oh, well, I gotta go home and get some rest, I got school tomorrow you know. Kakashi nodded and reached to pull his book back out. However, when he reached into the place he kept the book, he realized it was gone. He looked back at Naruto to see him holding the small orange book. A snake slithered away. Hey, here you go, Mom. Naruto shouted. Kakashi's eyes widened as his precious book flew into the air, and Anko shot fire out of her mouth. The book was turned to dust before his very eyes. He fell to his knees. Severe anger raging in his eyes. Suddenly, Naruto tossed him a book that slapped him in the face. His eyes got even wider. Geez, Kakashi, Naruto replied with a grin. Don't freak out so bad. Naruto and Anko almost died laughing when they got home, promising to pull that again one day. So you all ready for your day? Anko asked. I guess, Naruto replied as he put his bag in the corner of his room. After begging the Hokage, a new room was built into the tower to separate Anko and Naruto, giving them each a bedroom. Really? Then what's wrong? Anko asked. You're my kid. I know when something's bugging you. It's just, I wanna make a big entrance. Something that'll let 'em all know that I'm not your average ninja in training, Naruto replied. Trust me, kid, Anko replied. I have just the thing for you to do. Naruto looked at his mom with question, but listened to what she had to say. As she explained it, the grin on his face grew wider and wider. Soon the day came. A man by the name of Yumino Iruka was walking through the hall to his classroom. He had a small class, probably his smallest class ever, only having about 9 students. He entered the classroom. Noise and laughing and such were blasting through the room. He always hated the first year with a new class. He had to memorize a bunch of new names, figure out what made each of them tick, and how to get each one under his control. He sighed as he walked to the front of the room and slammed his books on the table. The noise was so loud that everyone in the room looked like the crap themselves upon hearing the noise. Now that have your undivided attention, we may begin. He said to the class. My name is Yumino Iruka. You will address me as Iruka-sensei, and not by anything else. I want to make one thing clear to you all. This is not a babysitting service. I have people in this class that want to learn, and as such I will remove you from the class if you appear to be holding the rest back. The class all nodded in agreement. Now that that's all out of the way, let's take roll. He pulled out a sheet of paper from a notebook. Let's see here. Inazuka Kiba, here, called a loud kid. Akamichi Choji. Yo, a large boy called with his mouth full. Haruno Sakura. Present, called a pink-haired girl, who was glaring at another girl with blonde hair. Yamanaka Ino. Here, the blonde girl shouted, returning her glare back to Sakura. Uchiha Sasuke. The black-haired boy replied. Sakura and Ino both drooled over him. Nara Shikamaru. How troublesome, the lazy-eyed boy replied. Hyuga Hinata. Here, Hinata replied. She was looking around, wondering where Naruto was. Aburame Shino. A boy with sunglasses simply raised his hand. Mitarashi Naruto. Silence. No one was answering. Hinata was beginning to get nervous. Did Naruto change his mind? Did he decide not to join the academy after all? No, that wasn't Naruto's style. She was sure he would come. Naruto. Iruka called out again. Naruto Mitarashi, are you here? Again, no one answered. Mitarashi Naruto going once, twice, 3 Tim. Iruka froze. He looked at the window just in time to see a giant black mass blast through the glass. The students all rose to their feet as somebody just broke through a window. Hinata immediately put her head on her desk. Please, not like this, she thought to herself. It was too good to be true though. The person stood up, resembling a boy with blonde hair, which hung in a ponytail. He wore a large, black trench coat, a fishnet shirt, black baggy pants, and a pair of black combat boots. Suddenly a large flyer flew out behind him. In huge red letters, it read, Mitarashi Naruto, future genin. Hey, not bad, huh Hinata? Naruto shouted. Every eye in the class turned and glanced at Hinata, who was sitting in the back. Her face was a blood red. She put her head even further down on the desk. She was cursing Naruto under breath. One day and she was already pegged out as the freak who jumped through a window to show off. Iruka walked up behind Naruto and smiled. Mitarashi Naruto? Iruka asked. Yup, that's me, Naruto shouted. Good, Iruka replied. He then smashed his fist into the back of Naruto's head. Get in a seat and sit down. Naruto laughed and shrugged his shoulders. He made his way to the back of the room with a grin. He made sure everyone would know who he was. He was so happy that he failed to notice every giving him glares. He was already the one in the mind of the students who decided to piss the teacher off in the first day. Hinata was praying that she wouldn't have to pay for her best friend's fun. Iruka sat mumbling under his breath as he pulled out another sheet, trying to find who was the parent or guardian of his new, favorite, student. He finally matched them up, and almost turned ghost white. Anko, he thought. I thought he looked familiar. This is going to be one interesting 7 years, especially with a kid being raised by that psycho. It's bad enough that I have the damn fox demon, but now he's being raised by that woman too. What did I do to deserve this? Alright, he said with a sigh. Let's get started. Meanwhile, Anko and Kurenai were sitting at a dango restaurant, enjoying a late breakfast. Anko was telling her exactly how she set up Naruto to greet his new class. The grin never left her face during the whole thing. You really had him do that? Kurenai asked. Of course, Anko replied. He wanted to make a big entrance, all I did was push him in the right direction. Iruka will kill you later, the Junin replied. Both girls looked right at each other and nearly fell in the floor laughing. Iruka was smart, but his skills were lacking, one reason that he never made it past the Chunin level. At any rate, there was nothing to do, but kill time until the school day was over. They finished their meal and began to walk from the restaurant. I really wonder how Iruka will take Naruto as a student, Kurenai asked. Who knows? Anko said, throwing a dango stick into the trash. Why don't you ask Naruto when he graduates? Maybe he'll end up on your team. Don't even joke like that, Kurenai replied. That's all I need is a mini you on my team. Naruto was now 9, and it was his 3rd year at the academy. No one in the academy knew quite what to think about Naruto. Sasuke thought he is an annoying, talentless loser. Kiba thought the same. Ino and Sakura both hated him because he didn't worship the ground Sasuke walked on. Shino didn't care much one way or the other, as was the same with Shikamaru and Choji. Iruka thought he was just like Anko, and cried for the future when 2 of her running around. Of course, Hinata was his best friend, so she had to like him. Naruto didn't really take much at the class or school seriously over the years. Most of the things Iruka taught, Naruto already knew from training with his mom. As a result, Naruto would often let his mind wander or fall asleep in the class, and his basic grades showed this. However, when it came time for tests, Naruto was one of, if not the best, except for when it came to clone jutsu tests. It was then that Naruto decided that clone jutsu was his worst area, and he tried to avoid it whenever possible. Every day after class, he and Hinata would meet up with Lee and Tenten over at Training Ground 13, where they would just waste time talking, maybe doing some light training, things like that. Afterwards, Naruto would head home for his next lesson with Anko. She had finally decided that he was ready to learn special jutsu, and as a result, the training that night took them into the middle of the forest. What are we doing out here? He asked. I think you're about ready to start learning some of those snake jutsus and stuff I showed ya when you were little. Anko answered. There's only one thing we need to work on before that. So you gonna leave me in the dark, or tell me? He asked. Anko punched him in the back of the head, knowing full and well that he got his smartassness from her. We're gonna work on chakra control. Anko answered. You spend way too much doing the basic jutsus still, and if you wanna learn any of these, then you need to be able cut back drastically. Whatever, so how do we do that? Naruto asked. Climb trees. Anko replied. I gain chakra control by climbing a damn tree. Naruto asked. What's after that? Learn how to do fire jutsu by painting a fence. Anko frowned and tossed a kunai aimed right in between his eyes. Naruto simply caught it between his fingers and grinned. You taught me too good, he said. Anyways, the point of this is to climb the tree without using your hands. Anko answered. Before you open that damn mouth, let me show you what I mean. Anko took a deep breath. Naruto watched as chakra began to flow around her feet, and then suddenly ran up the tree all the way to the top. Naruto's eyes widened as she stopped at a branch, walked out to it, and then flipped over the side, looking at him upside down. Not bad, huh? Anko asked with a wink. All you need to do is focus chakra in your feet and run towards the tree, but it's gotta be the right amount, or else. This'll be easy. Naruto shouted. He ran straight to the tree and took one step on it before flipping upside down and falling to the ground. Anko nearly fell off the tree while laughing at this. She jumped to the ground and walked over to the boy with a huge grin. Not enough chakra, she said in a sing-song voice. I'll show you not enough, Naruto mumbled. He picked himself off the ground and ran back to his starting place. Taking a deep breath, he ran back towards the tree. This time he made it up the tree about 2 feet, before his foot pushed into the tree, causing him to fall back to the ground. Anko sighed and bent down to where he landed on the ground. Damn it, Naruto said. I almost had it. Actually, you used too much. Anko replied. At any rate, I can only give you the advice to readjust your chakra output and try it again. She reached into her pocket and tossed a kunai at him that just missed hitting him. I'm gonna go grab some dango and then call it a night. Meanwhile, you keep it and use that kunai to mark how far you get. Oh, and you have to use your feet only for climbing, cause my friend there is going to watch you to make sure you do it right. Naruto looked over and saw a snake sitting on a tree stump. Later, squirt, Anko shouted before disappearing in a cloud of smoke. Naruto sighed and picked up the kunai to continue his lesson, now under the watchful eye of one of Anko's snakes. He kept trying and falling. It kept on like this for the rest of the night. Anko checked back in at one point to see that Naruto had made it about 20 feet up the tree. Anko suggested him resting for the night, but Naruto refused, saying he would have this mastered by the morning. Anko shrugged and walked into the tower, leaving Naruto on his own. It was pretty nice having the tower to herself for one night. She enjoyed a full bottle of sake, followed by passing out on the couch. She walked out the next morning discovering that Naruto was nowhere to be seen. Suddenly a kunai flew right by her face, gracing the side of her cheek. She looked up and saw Naruto smiling, standing upside down on the branch she stood the previous night. Nice job, Squirt, Anko said to him. Now get down here and I'll teach you one of my jutsus. Naruto hopped down and ran to Anko. She showed him the hand symbols, and then shot her arms out, shooting out 5 snakes from her sleeves. Naruto repeated what she did and shot his arms out. He managed to send 2 snakes out, which was enough to make him happy. He realized that he was going to be late and ran towards the academy. Anko sighed as she looked up at the tree, and then headed to town for some breakfast. She would later hear talk about how 2 snakes crawled into Ino's dress in class that day. Soon, the final day of the class came. Naruto, due to his pranks and laziness in the class, secured himself a nice cozy place as the last in the class. In order to graduate, the class needed to successfully make 2 bunshin of themselves. All right everyone, Iruka said to the class. In order to graduate you must make 2 successful bushin. That being said, let's get, wait, where is? Before he could even finish, Naruto jumped through the window that he done so many times before. Iruka regretted the fact that he was Anko's kid. He sighed and had Naruto take his place in the back of the line. One by one, the class would come down to perform the test. Hinata took her place in the back with Naruto. You had to be late again? She asked. Come on, it's not like that bad. Naruto replied. Besides, I won't get to do this thing again, also, I feel like it's my duty to be. A complete doby, Sasuke muttered. Shut up, asshole, Naruto replied. Naruto and Sasuke hated each other. No, that was an understatement. They wanted to kill each other. Sasuke enjoyed rubbing Naruto being last in the class, even if he did that on purpose. Hinata smiled when Iruka called Sasuke down to take his test, thereby avoiding another fight from breaking out between the two. Why do you let him get to you so bad, Naruto-kun? Hinata asked. Because he bugs me, Naruto replied. He's had his whole life handed to him, just because of the status his family had. Naruto, Hinata began. Hinata, would you please come down here and take your test today? Iruka called out. Hinata apologized and walked down to the front of the class. Naruto leaned up against the wall and sighed. He looked over to see Sasuke glaring at him while showing off his new forehead protector. Naruto rolled his eyes, only to be hit in the back of the head by Sakura and Ino. What? You think you're so good? Sakura asked. Quit picking fights with Sasuke-kun, he's way smarter, stronger, and better than you'll ever be. Yeah, Dobi, Ino replied. Why don't you quit wasting everyone's time and get out of here so the people who matter can go finish? Iruka's assistant, Mizuki, happened to see the display that Naruto was given. An idea was forming in his head. He smiled and stood up. Iruka, it's past lunchtime, why don't we take a break here, and come back in about an hour to finish up? Sakura, Choji, Ino, and Naruto still need to take their tests anyways. Being hungry may distract them. He asked Iruka. Sounds good, Mizuki-san. Iruka replied. Alright, we have an hour for lunch, then you all come back so we can finish the test, and Naruto, be on time and use the door. Whatever, Naruto mumbled. He headed for the door with Hinata, when Mizuki put his hands on his shoulder and stopped him. I heard the way Ino and the others talked about Naruto. Mizuki said. You know it isn't fair, almost as if they never gave you chance before they started hating you. It's okay, Mizuki-sensei. Naruto replied with a smile. I'm used to it. Well, I'm not. Mizuki replied. Let me make it up to you, by taking you out for ramen. What do you say? I say why didn't you ask sooner? Naruto shouted. Let's go Hinata-chan. Hinata didn't even have time to agree before Naruto was pulling her along. The three of them reached the ramen stand, ordering miso ramen for Hinata, beef ramen for Naruto, and shrimp ramen for Mizuki. They sat and made small talk while waiting for the ramen. Finally it came. Naruto and Hinata both reached for the chopsticks, and Mizuki smirked as he dropped something into Naruto's bowl. Neither Hinata or Naruto noticed this though, and the three quickly ate the ramen and made their way back to the academy. The tests resumed, and after finishing up with the others, Iruka finally called Naruto to the front. Naruto felt woozy as he got to his feet. He shook it off as being slightly nervous about the test, and hurried to the front. Alright, Naruto, Iruka said with a sigh. Hurry up and make 2 bushin. That's it, Naruto replied. Damn, Ka-san is right, you are a pushover. Just shut up and do it, Iruka said rolling his eyes. Naruto nodded, noticing that the woozy feeling was back again. Naruto, something wrong. Hinata sat up in her seat as she noticed Naruto acting funny. No, sorry. Alright, 2 bushin coming up. Naruto shouted. Naruto focused and performed the desired jutsu. Disappointment arose. Standing beside Naruto was one of those failed clones, like he made back when Anko started training him. He felt a knot in his stomach. He heard them all, minus Hinata laughing behind him. Hinata was speechless. Naruto had this jutsu down, there's no way he should have messed up. I can't believe this, Naruto, you fail. Iruka muttered. Come now, Iruka-san. Mizuki pleaded. He did manage to make at least one. Can't you let him pass with that? Did you even feel the need to ask me that? Iruka replied. Why should I reward him for barely trying in class? If he would have taken it seriously, he would have passed. Naruto wasted no time. He didn't want to hear the jeers coming from all the class. He didn't want to hear Iruka telling them to be back at the class at 10 tomorrow to meet their Junin instructors. He didn't even want to wait for Hinata. Naruto ran straight out of the school, straight to the swing in the back of the academy schoolyard. He watched as all the parents celebrated with their children about passing. Anko was on a mission today, so she wouldn't be back until late tonight. Naruto sighed as he was about to head home, when he saw Mizuki in front of him. Naruto-kun, I'm sorry. Mizuki said. Ah, don't worry about it, Naruto said. He flashed a smile, but Mizuki could tell it was fake. I just don't know, Mizuki-sensei. I thought I had everything on top, but it seems like no matter what I do, there's always gonna be something in my way. Naruto, what if I knew of a way that you could pass the genin exam for sure next time. Not only that, but it has techniques that would make anyone respect you. Mizuki replied. What is it? Naruto replied. Mizuki smiled. He bent down and whispered. Naruto started grinning. He couldn't believe that something like that was in the village. He nodded, and agreed to meet Mizuki in the woods near the tower at 10 p.m. Mizuki walked away from the excited Naruto, face beaming with pride. Night fell in the village. Anko had finally returned from her mission and entered the tower, only to find it quiet. Yo, Squirt, she called out. Get your ass out here. Guess he ain't here. A smile crept around her lips. She took off out the door to go find him. After all, today was the day he graduated from the academy, and she wanted to hear all about it. She landed right in front of the Hokage tower, just in time to see several ninja run out. She made her way to the old man's room, to see what was going on. Hokage-sama, what's with all the Anbu? Anko asked. The third simply raised his eyes at her. It's Naruto, he replied. Meanwhile, in another part of the forest, Naruto sat breathing heavily, with deep wounds all over his body. Mizuki stood across from him, smirking at the boy's pain. He had just revealed the worst secret to Naruto. Naruto was the demon that almost destroyed all of Konoha. He fed him the reasons why he deserved to be hated, why he needed to die, why the world would be better off without him. To make matters worse, the child believed it. Now do you see? Mizuki said as he looked at Naruto with more hate than the boy had ever seen. Die. Die like they all want you to. No, you're lying, Hinata, Mom, Lee, Tenten. Naruto staggered to his feet. If they care about you, where are they now, demon? Mizuki asked. The kids are looking for Naruto as we speak. Anko shouted as she glared at Mizuki. I'm here to protect the most important thing in my life from a tem like you. Mitarashi Anko, Mizuki said, looking her over. Give me a minute to finish of the first demon, and then I'll take care of you. Anko sent several snakes towards the traitor, but Mizuki simply jumped over them, and launched a massive shuriken at Naruto. Anko reacted the only way she could. A scream echoed out into the area. Naruto looked up to see Anko over top of him, a large shuriken sticking out of her back. You alright, Squirt? Anko managed to ask. Before she could even get an answer, Mizuki kicked her to the ground. Maybe. I'll finish you first, Mizuki replied. Naruto's eyes widened as he watched Mizuki pick her up by her hair, and hold a kunai to her throat. He felt anger. A presence of a different energy flowing within him. Naruto rose to his feet, growling. Get the fuck away from here, he growled. Mizuki's eyes widened. Naruto's eyes were now red with black slits. Mizuki smiled. What are you going to do, demon? Mizuki asked. Naruto said nothing. He performed several hand signs, and suddenly, 100 Narutos appeared behind him. All 100 ran forward, and before Mizuki could even scream, he began to literally be ripped apart. Anko quickly rose to her feet and grabbed the real Naruto, before he could go any further. Iruka and some Anbu arrived at the scene. Mizuki lay clinging to life. Anko, though wounded, held the angered Naruto, stroking his hair while hugging him, slowly calming him down. What happened? Iruka asked. Mizuki tricked him. Anko replied. Mizuki is the traitor, caught by Naruto, who saved my life as well, using the cage bushin. Iruka nodded and he bent down to Naruto's eye level. I apologize for everything, he said. You arose with the true essence of a ninja, ready to put your life on the line to protect those who mean the most to you. Iruka-sensei, Naruto asked. I want you to have this, he said. Iruka reached in his pocket and pulled out a small headband. What's this? Naruto asked. A forehead protector. Iruka replied. You showed that you are ready to be a ninja after all. I apologize for everything, Naruto. Be at the school tomorrow at 9 a.m. to officially begin your career as a genin. Hi, Naruto replied. He tied his protector around his head, and despite his cool act he was trying to put on, he began to dance happily. I'm a ninja. I'm a ninja, he shouted to his mother. Anko smiled at the boy's happiness, but at the same time, a thought ran through her mind. Does he not even remember what happened? She thought. Anko and Naruto returned home for the evening, but not before running into Lee, Hinata, and Tenten to enjoy some ramen as a celebration. Meanwhile, the three Junin chosen to lead the new graduates arrived at the Hokage's tower. Glad that you all made it on time, the Hokage said. Kakashi, Kurenai, and Asuma, please be seated. All three sat in the chairs in the office. I trust you have all three gone over the information in the folders on the 8 graduates. Yes, Hokage-sama, Kurenai replied. However, it will be difficult to lead a team of only 2 genin. Suddenly, Iruka ran into the room. The sudden arrival of him surprised the others, but he apologized and walked to the Hokage. Iruka-san, what are you doing here? The Hokage asked. I apologize for coming during this meeting, but I have to deliver this to Kakashi and the others. Iruka replied. He handed them all a piece of paper, as well as one to the Hokage. This Mitarashi Naruto, Asuma replied looking at the paper. I was informed that he did not pass the genin exam. Naruto passed. Iruka explained. He took his test late, during the Mizuki and Forbidden Scroll incident. Not only was able to save the scroll and Anko-san, but he mastered the Kage Bushin Jutsu. That is a Junin level technique, Kakashi replied. Indeed, but I witnessed the whole event. The Hokage replied, pointing to his crystal ball. I approve of Naruto's graduation. If any have any reason as to why he should not graduate, then feel free to talk to me after this meeting. Iruka, you may leave. Iruka bowed and left the room. Now then, let us begin. Kakashi, since you have held the Junin level the longest, you may make the first pick of who you want on your team. I will take Uchiha Sasuke as my first choice. Kakashi replied. Very well, Hokage replied. Asuma, I will pick Nara Shikamaru as my first genin. Asuma answered. Kurenai, the Hokage called. I will pick Hyuga Hinata as my first choice. Kurenai replied. Very well, now who will be your second choice, Kakashi? The Hokage asked. Inuzuka Kiba. Kakashi replied. Akamaiki Choji. Asuma answered without being called. Mitarashi Naruto. Kurenai suddenly said. Aren't you supposed to save the bottom of the barrel for last? Asuma asked with a smile. Especially considering something he had no choice over, and was almost killed because of several times in his life. Kurenai replied. We all know that he is a child, not the demon. Just like his mother is nothing more than a person, not a monster. I'm tired of them both suffering for things that have happened, no matter how hard they try to overcome it. Very well. The Hokage replied smiling. Kakashi. I will take Yamanaka Ino as my final student, he answered. I will take Haruno Sakura, Asuma stated. Which leaves Kurenai to take Aburame Shino as her last student. The Hokage replied. Now, I will go over some minor things, just in case anyone has forgotten. In order for the genin to be officially taught by you, a test must be passed showing that the team you have chosen is capable of working together. If one of them should fail, the whole team must be returned to the academy, until a new genin is capable of taking the member's place. After you finish your test, and if they should pass, return the day after the test to begin running your D-rank missions. Now, you are all dismissed. However, Kurenai, please remain here for a moment. Kakashi and Asuma bowed and left the room. What is it, Hokage-sama? Kurenai asked. I'm sure you know, Naruto is the container for Demon Fox, the Hokage began. Kurenai nodded. Now, as you know, this information must remain a secret. It could be a disaster should his team find out at the start. While I doubt Hinata would care, we can't predict how Shino, much less the rest of the genin would react. I understand, Hokage-sama. Kurenai bowed. It shall remain a secret. Good, now go. The Hokage replied. You'll have your hands quite full with Naruto on your team, and we know how he is after spending over half of his life raised by Anko. Tell me, why did you pick Naruto? Let's just say, as a favor for a friend, Kurenai replied as she left. The next day, Naruto arrived to the class on time no less. He immediately received various surprised glares as he walked down the stairs and sat near Hinata. She noticed the smile that was spread on his face. Having a good morning? Hinata asked. Damn straight. Naruto replied. Mom taught me a new jutsu. I made genin, and I learned a clone jutsu that is far superior to the one you all know. I think you just got lucky, Dobi, Sasuke replied. There's no way a loser like you could make genin. Without even wasting a minute, a kunai was suddenly sent flying by Sasuke's cheek. Naruto walked over to a wall, pulled out the kunai, licking the blood that was on it. Sasuke and the whole class looked at him like he was crazy. Tastes like fear and failure, Naruto replied. Naruto. Ino and Sakura shouted as they both ran towards him. Naruto simply slid out of the way and watched as the both ran into the wall. You should really watch where you two are going, Naruto replied. He returned to his seat, and talked to Hinata until Iruka came into the class. Everyone who was still standing returned to their seats. Ino and Sakura did their daily battle over who would sit by Sasuke until Shino walked in and took the seat. Alright, class, Iruka said. My final act as teacher is to assign you all to your new genin teams. Each of these 3 teams will consist of 3 of you, and be led by Junin. During this time, you are to obey their commands, as they are now your leader. In other words, please do your best. Now that you are genin, you officially represent Konoha. The 9 genin nodded and Iruka looked at the team sheets he was given. Team 10, led by Sarutobi Asuma, will consist of Haruno Sakura, Akamaiki Choji, and Nara Shikamaru. No sooner had the man finished speaking that Asuma entered the room. He instructed the genin to follow him to training field 9. Choji followed first, munching on some chips, Shikamaru mumbling something about troublesome girl, while Sakura cried about not being with Sasuke. Next we have Team 7. Iruka resumed. Your new leader will be Hatake Kakashi, and will consist of Yamanaka Ino, Uchiha Sasuke, and Inuzuka Kiba. Ino cheered as she would be paired with her precious Sasuke. Sasuke remained silent, and Kiba looked around. Something was missing. Kakashi wasn't there. Yo, where is Kakashi-sensei? He asked. Good question, Iruka replied. Take a seat by the front while you wait, and I assign the others. Now then, the next team is Team 8. It will consist of Hyuga Hinata, Aburame Shino, and Mitarashi Naruto. The 3 looked up as the said woman walked in the room. She looked at her 3 new students. Hinata bowed politely, Shino simply nodded, while Naruto had a huge grin on his face. Kurenai sighed. This would be a true test of patience with Anko's kid on her team. Alright, team, she told the 3 genin. Follow me to the roof, and we'll begin things there.